Wow. Okay, let's dive right into this explainer with an absolutely massive, totally surprising premise from a recent morning show interview. We are talking about a potential historic shakeup in Australian federal politics. I mean, new polling indicates that One Nation could actually replace the coalition as Labor's official opposition if an election were held today. That is a truly huge statement to kick things off, and it really sets the stage for a fascinating look at modern political strategy.
So, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to take a totally objective look at a pretty fiery, rhetoric-heavy interview with MP Barnaby Joyce. Our goal here, we want to cut straight through the noise and look directly at the specific political and economic claims driving today's headlines. Just to be clear, we aren't here to take sides or endorse any viewpoints. We're simply going to break down exactly what's being argued, how it's being presented, and why it actually matters to the broader political landscape.
To help us make sense of this fast-moving broadcast, we've broken our analysis down into four distinct themes. 1. The polling shakeup. 2. The economy and mortgage stress. 3. Conservative strategy. And 4. The Teal Party proposition.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, the polling shakeup.
You know, what's actually super fascinating here is Joyce's surprisingly cautious response to that massive polling news. When the host hits him with the idea that One Nation might become the official opposition, his reaction wasn't to just immediately claim victory. No, instead, he states plainly, it's indicative. It's not the vote on the day. Don't get carried away with ourselves. Don't get hubristic. He's basically using this moment to urge his base to stay grounded. He frames the poll as an incredible honor, sure, but then quickly pivots, saying they'll just take it as a cue to keep working as hard as they can for the Australian people. It's a highly calculated move to appear completely focused rather than overly celebratory. Which brings us to Section 2, economy and mortgage stress. So how is he justifying this potential political earthquake? Well, Joyce anchors his economic argument with a pretty stark statistic, 50%. During the interview, he points out that weekend property clearance rates in Sydney have plummeted down to this 50% mark. And that's absolutely crucial because lower clearance rates signal a freezing housing market. It means people are literally pulling their houses off the market out of fear of the current financial climate. He leans heavily on this data point as a baseline indicator of real, tangible financial worry among everyday voters. And he uses that to build a much broader, kind of terrifying narrative for homeowners. He goes on to cite a report predicting that by Christmas, Australians could be facing the absolute highest mortgage stress we've seen in 2 decades. By throwing these dramatic economic realities into the conversation, he's building a very firm foundation for his political attacks. He is framing the current situation as historically difficult for everyday families. Of course, he links all of these economic stressors directly to the current Labor government. To impartially report his pointed accusations, first, he claims the Prime Minister's polling is disastrous right now, specifically noting it has a 2 in front of it. Second, he accuses the government of delivering a really bad budget that, in his words, they lied about beforehand. And finally, he attacks them for evading questions regarding capital gains tax, or CGT, changes. It's really interesting to see how he structures his argument here, firmly connecting those kitchen table economic issues directly to alleged government policy failures. And this is where Joyce's specific brand of rhetoric really comes out to play. He uses humor and mockery to absolutely hammer his point home. He suggests that when everyday people ask the government what's going to happen with their capital gains tax, the answers are so incredibly vague that they might as well be telling the public to ask Joan of Arc or Jesus for tax advice. It's a colorful, over-the-top rhetorical device used specifically to highlight what he perceives as government evasiveness and incompetence.
Okay, shifting gears a bit, Section 3, conservative strategy.
When the host brings up the idea of Conservatives needing to do a kumbaya dance and work together, especially given the polls predicting Labor's likely return to power, Joyce completely flips the script. Instead of acknowledging One Nation as an outlier or some junior partner, he directly states, "I'm really disappointed the Liberal Party is splitting our vote." Did you catch that? He playfully but very pointedly accuses the established Liberal Party of splitting the One Nation vote rather than the other way around. It's a really bold assertion of dominance in the Conservative space. But behind the banter, there is a very firm strategy here. Joyce states they're open to negotiating on supply and confidence, which essentially means providing the votes a government needs to actually function and pass budgets, but only in strict exchange for policy. And what are those policies? Well, he claims their focus will be firmly on social cohesion, economic development, and national security. So he's aggressively pitching One Nation as a serious negotiating force that will demand specific policy exchanges to support the Australian people. And finally, that takes us to Section 4, the Teal Party Proposition.
Listen to the absolute night and day difference in how Joyce talks about his own camp versus the Teals. The Teals, for context, are typically climate-focused independents who've won seats in affluent, traditionally conservative areas. Notice how Joyce frames One Nation as a party of deep substance, bringing social cohesion, economic development, and security. But then, in the same breath, he immediately stereotypes the Teals as out-of-touch elites who just need gin and tonics, big yachts, and the Royal Sydney Golf Club. It is a sharp, very intentional contrast between a serious policy pitch for himself and a highly satirical, dismissive framing of this potential new Teal coalition.
Instead of actually debating any potential Teal policies or the genuine threat they pose to conservative seats, Joyce goes all in on wealthy stereotypes to mock them. He literally asks, is there a yacht big enough to keep them on, and is there enough gin and tonic to go around? He jokes about accountants giving rundowns on trust accounts and suggests they'd hold their party room meetings at the exclusive Royal Sydney Golf Club. This is a vivid demonstration of his specific messaging style, right? Using caricature and humor to completely delegitimize a political rival in the eyes of everyday voters, all without ever engaging with their actual platform. So what does this all mean for us? That's the million-dollar question and the ultimate takeaway from this explainer. As the election approaches, we have to ask ourselves, will these early polling indicators and these intense, very real economic frustrations actually translate into a completely realigned parliament? Are we witnessing a genuine historic shakeup of Australian political power where one nation takes the opposition mantle? Or is this all just early heated rhetoric reacting to a really tough economy? Thank you so much for exploring this explainer with me. Keep an eye on those polls and keep asking the big questions.